If you've seen any of my previous videos, you will know that I'm a great fan of using two particular type of filters. One of them being the circular polarizing filter, to give me those nice deep blue skies and white fluffy cloud look. And the other being the 10 times neutral density filter, so I can get that nice milky water effect. Now, I consider filters to be an essential part of my camera gear, and I've never really seen the logic in fitting cheap filters to the front of an expensive lens. So it's safe to say that when Kentfaith got in touch with me to try out their K&F magnetic filter range, I was a little bit sceptical because they're not really a brand that I've associated with high quality filters. But in this video I'm going to give them a thorough test and see if they do indeed punch well above their price tag. Hi guys, and welcome to another video, and I'm going to jump straight into the price of this filter set, because effectively what you get for £85 is three different filters. You get a UV filter, you get a circular polarizing filter, and you get a 10 times filter. Now £85 may not seem that cheap, but the B&W 10 times filter that I use at the moment actually costs more than that alone. So for the same price of this one filter, you can get a complete filter set in a nice carry case. And this filter set does indeed have a hidden trick up its sleeve that this thing cannot do. Now, a quick disclaimer, Kentfaith did send me these filters free of charge, and I do get to keep them at the end of doing the review. They also sent me this magnetic lens cap free of charge, and that's not included in the normal kit. However, I'm not going to let this bias this video review. If I don't like these filters, I will tell you, and also I won't use them again. And I must stress that Kentfaith do not get to see this video before it goes live, and everything I say about these filters in this review are entirely my own opinions, and nobody's paid me to say it. Right, so now that we've got that out of the way, let's jump straight into the review. Now, the K&F magnetic filters are, funnily enough, magnetic fitting, so that means you can change them nice and quickly. Now, it's as simple as just doing that, which is beautiful. But what I'm going to talk about first of all is actually the lens cap, which doesn't actually come with the set, which I think is a shame, to be honest. I think it would have been nice to include a lens cap in the initial set, but it doesn't. And as you can see, it removes really simply and goes back on nice and quickly. However, and there is a however with this, because it doesn't have any sort of mechanism for pressing it in, it effectively doesn't have any means of holding it. And that makes it quite tricky to take on and off. Now, I like to leave my lens hood attached to my lens a lot of the time, and I like to have then the lens cap inside. And basically, if it's a normal traditional pinch method, I can just put my finger in, pinch it, remove it. With this, if I've got the lens hood on, I can't get my hand in and get it out. So it means I then have to remove the lens hood to take it off, or not use the lens hood like I'm doing here. So I think all it needed was some sort of simple lip here that you could just get your fingers on, or sort of pull that you could do it so you could pull it off. Because at the moment you have to physically get your fingers around the side to yank it off. But it works brilliantly, and what I would say, my worry with magnetic system would be that it could fall off in your camera bag. This is not going to fall off. It's a lovely, simple mechanism. Now, of course, Kentfaith are probably better known as K&F Concept, and this is the K&F Concept magnetic lens filter system. And you get this lovely case, which is a really nicely constructed case. And you also get, if I remove the lens hood, you get this nice, really slimline magnetic adapter ring there, and that's a really nice fit. And then in the actual set, you get three filters, so you get a UV filter, the 10 times ND filter, and a circular polarizing filter. Now, all of these filters are manufactured using German optical HD quality glass. So that means, on paper at least, that the performance from these filters should be excellent. Okay, so the first filter I'm going to talk about is the UV filter. Now, if I'm being honest, I never use UV filters. I've always found them a little bit pointless. There was a reason to use them in the day of film when you needed to try and block that bit of UV light. But as your digital camera sensor already has a UV filter in front of it, I find UV filters, well, just pointless. I think they're just a good add-on sale for camera manufacturers, if I'm being blunt. But they are good for protecting the front element of your lens, so they're not a bad thing to have. I just wouldn't buy one out of choice. But you know, as this comes part of a kit, I'm considering this almost like as a freebie anyway, so I think really I'm not too worried. What I have noticed, and I'm using the 67mm, is when I've put it on, there's a little bit of wiggle around, which is a bit strange. But I imagine it won't go anywhere. I'm a little bit concerned that it doesn't seem as tight a fit as the other two filters. Keeping on the subject of the wiggle of that UV filter, it's put the polarizing filter on and you'll see there's hardly any. So that's really weird. It is like the UV filter is actually a touch smaller. Bizarre. Now, I'm a huge fan of the polarizing filter, but it can be a bit of a faff on at times, having to quickly stick it on and rotate it and all that jazz. So I'm hoping this is going to make my life simpler. So just remove the lens cap. As you can see, it's quite difficult, which I suppose is good. You don't want it falling off. Choose the filter. It would be nice if they were colour coded, if I'm being honest. Wouldn't that be lovely if they could have like different colours, you know, like maybe blue for polarizing filter or red for 10 times. I don't know why those colours particularly, but anyway, it'd make my life easier. But it's not a deal breaker. So as you can see from the video view, it's not the most exciting shot, but the polarizer does a lovely job of popping those clouds in the distance that you can hardly really see with a visible eye. So yeah, really nice. Basically I've recomposed this. Not the most brilliant shot in the world, but I think it's for the purpose of just trying to filter out, I think it'll do the job. So I'm going to take it with the filter on. I'm just blocking out the light. As normal when shooting polarizing filter, I'm shooting 90 degrees to the sun. Sun's there, so that should pretty much give me full on polarization. Now quickly take the filter off. Again, block it. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to see if there's any sort of colour cast, which I'm not really sure about. So let's import the two shots into the computer and see what the difference is in the colours and how well the filter actually performs. So here are the two imported shots. The shot on the left hand side is the shot with the polarising filter on, and the shot with the right hand side is the shot without. Now I've actually set the white band to exactly the same on both shots. And as you can see, the left hand side with the polarising filter fitted is a lot warmer. Obviously there's more definition in the clouds, a little bit more of a pop, but there's definitely a warm colour cast to the filter, which actually is really nice because polarising filters can sometimes tend to be a little bit on the cool side. So I think there's absolutely nothing wrong at all with having a slight warm colour cast on a polarising filter. Actually, I'd say it's actually of great benefit. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with the performance from this filter, to be honest. And if we just look at it, there's not really any optical difference at all, which we would expect. As I said at the time of shooting, it's not the greatest comparison shot, but I think it does prove that this polarising filter works really quite nicely. Right, I'm on the coastline now and I've just been using the 10 times filter. Now I've actually got a bit more experience using this 10 times. If you saw last week's video about my 29-day project, I used this 10 times filter a few times during that video, so I have a better idea of how it's actually performing. And I have to say, I think it's performing great. So at the moment, I'm not particularly seeing much difference between that and the far more expensive B&W filter. So what I did here anyway, now I would have actually videoed the behind the scenes as such, but the tide's coming in and basically the light was changing. I wanted to try and keep everything as consistent as possible. So what I've basically done is I took a shot without a filter and I took a shot with the 10 times on, and I also took the 10 times off and I put on the B&W filter and I took exactly the same shot with that. So what we're going to do now is actually put those onto the computer and we're going to compare the files. And what I'm really interested to know is there any lack in definition, which I don't think there will be, I think that's going to be pretty much identical. I don't think there'll be any optical problems. But is there a colour cast on this? Because the B&W does have a colour cast, all fairity, but I'm just wondering how does it compare to the colour cast of this? So I think that'd be quite interesting. But all in all, I'm really pleased with this filter at the moment. So yeah, let's have a look at the files and see how they look. So I've imported the two different files. The left hand side is the one taken with the Kentfaith Concept magnetic 10 times filter, and the right hand side here is taken with the B&W 10 times filter. Now what's interesting is looking at exposure times. The Kentfaith is giving me 10 seconds, but the B&W is giving me 20 seconds. I don't think the light changed that much, so that's interesting. But of course the slightest change in the light or the metering could account for that, so I don't think we can read too much into it. Anyway, what I'm more interested in is the colour cast, and let's have a look. And I think, to be honest, it's very, very similar. Excuse the dust spots. But I think, of course, these are totally unprocessed photos. I think if there is any difference in the cast, it's so marginal that really there's nothing to really worry about. I think this is a very good performance from the Kentfaith filter, to be honest. And this is sort of reinforcing everything I've discovered over the last few weeks of trying it. It's a really good filter. I have absolutely no problems with it at all. And being able to fit it and remove it quickly with the magnetic fitting has been an absolute godsend. Overall, again, I think this is another positive result for the Kentfaith filter. Okay, so what are my final thoughts about these filters? Well, to be honest, for £85, I think the construction is brilliant, really good. Obviously, as you can see by the tests, optically I have no issues at all. And I think it's a really nice, lovely case. And nice touches like this, opens nicely so you can put around the belt of your camera bag and strap on the side, which I've been doing, which works perfectly well. I'm not sure about this flappy thing. I suppose it does stop rain getting in. It makes it look nice if nothing else, so there's nothing negative to say about it. And obviously you've got space for a few filters in there, so it's a really nicely made case. Now for the purpose of this review, I did give the UV filter a try, and as you would hope, it made absolutely no difference at all to my final shot. So really, that's everything I would expect from a UV filter. I'm still a little bit concerned that it was a bit smaller compared to the rest. It seemed to have a bit more wiggle room, but to be honest, it probably wouldn't cause any issues unless you're using an extremely wide angle lens. But the profile of it is that thin anyway that I do wonder if it would actually cause any bother, so it's probably absolutely fine. As I say, I just don't use UV filters, so it's not something that really concerns me. More of concern is a polarizing filter, because the polarizing filter is probably the one filter I do use the most. And honestly, I have absolutely no complaints at all with this polarizing filter. It works really nicely. Yes, it has a very slight colour cast, but that, in my eyes, that's a good thing. I remember back in the day when I was using film that I actually ordered a circular polarizing filter with an 81B warm-up filter actually built into it. So to give you sort of a warm polarizing filter. And this is nowhere near as strong as 81B, but you know, it does have a slight warm colour cast and it's actually really nice. So I really like the circular polarizing filter. Again, optically, no issues at all. There's no breakdown of quality. Everything's just as you would expect. And then perhaps the biggest surprise for me has been the 10 times, because I thought when I was using it on its own that it had a bit of a colour cast, but I've compared it to my B&W one and it's exactly the same, to the degree of actually not particularly knowing which one was which. So yeah, I think that is wonderful. And finally, I'm just going to quickly talk about the magnetic lens cap, which isn't included in this kit. And to be honest, I do think that's a little bit of a shame. I think the lens cap alone retails for about £25, which seems quite expensive for something that is just effectively a piece of metal, but it does work very well. It's nice and rigid, it doesn't move. It's a bit fiddly to get off, so I do wish it had some sort of, even something you could just get your fingers around to pull it off, but it's not a deal breaker. And I have found for the last couple of days, I have been using it instead of my Tamron pinch cap, and it's been working fine. So really, yeah, I have to take the hood off and pull it off. But that's not really the end of the world. Perhaps I've just been a bit lazy thinking I could pull it on and off without. So yeah, really, I think it's very good, but I wish it was included in the kit. But overall, my experience with these filters is very, very positive. And I will definitely be using them from now on. I have no reason to carry the rest of the filters around. This seems to just do everything I need. And, you know, I may look at what other filters they do just to get an idea of those. But really, I could live with just these two filters. As I say, the UV filter, for me, I don't really need it. I may use it in a really nasty environment perhaps, but realistically it'll just sit in here. But the other two, definitely. But as I say, great filters, I think worth every penny. I would not hesitate for a moment to recommend them. And if you like the look of them and you're in the market for some new filters, there's a link in the description below this video, and if you use the code JASON10, you'll receive a 10% discount. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, maybe subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll see you again soon for another one. Thanks again.